Okay, so the first reading for this week, week 5, or maybe the second reading, is from Matthew Avery Sutton, who's a historian at Washington State University on evangelicals and abortion. Clearly something we've been talking about in this class, the issue of abortion. And in particular, he's going to bring a faith tradition and its understanding, a history of its topic to discuss. So if you click on that link, you'll get here to this article in The Guardian. Okay. And so Matthew Sutton is a historian who has long been interested in how American evangelicals think about the future, how their notions of when Jesus will come back, how he'll come back, have influenced how they see the world. And so he's a historian. He writes about the past of people thinking about the future. It's kind of cool. And so this book that he wrote called American Apocalypse, A History of Modern Evangelicalism, looks at basically the ways in which evangelical Christians think about the future and how it impacts them now. And it's a history book of that. So in his article, he starts with the issue of Texas law relative to abortion. And at this point, this is in September 2021, the Supreme Court hadn't made a decision. Okay, we know the Supreme Court does make a decision later. But he talks about how this is, for many evangelical Christians, something they're happy about. They want to put an end to rights for abortion. Okay, so, and he writes, they believe that stopping abortion is central to keeping the United States as a holy and righteous nation, staving off the judgments of God, and surviving the coming apocalypse. So that what Americans think and do relative to abortion has huge impact on what God thinks about the United States, people in the United States. So now he's going to launch through a history, okay? He says abortion has not always been controversial among American Protestants. And he goes all the way back to colonial times when he says, most American Christians were totally fine with abortion as long as it was before the quickening. That's when a woman would feel the baby, the fetus moving inside of them. Now this began to change, he says, in the early 20th century. So from like 1600 to 1900, Protestants in America and the United States didn't see this as a big deal. They weren't against abortion. They saw it as birth control, basically. And then he has examples. He has the example of Billy Sunday, who was a revivalist who told women that they would be judged for the murder of unborn babies. It would cause the damnation of America. Notice there's that confluence, that kind of conflation of what you do influences what then will happen to the country. And then other examples of evangelical Christians being against abortion. Then he talks about this group of fundamentalists who link abortion to promiscuous sex. So basically the people who want abortions are people who are being sexually promiscuous. And this is a way to stopping abortion is a way to stop this kind of free love, immoral sexuality. Unlike many of these white evangelicals, according to Sutton, African American evangelicals before Roe v. Wade in the 1970s, they thought other issues like racism, nativism, Jim Crow, racial segregation were much bigger issues, okay? And that what women were doing with their bodies might have been a sin or might not, but wasn't the kind of chief issues. Then Matt Sutton goes through the Cold War. He gets into the rise of the feminist movement and how evangelicals, white evangelicals, opposed the feminist movement, and anything feminists wanted, evangelicals were against, and it goes on. And then he gets into the theology of this value. And so Matt Sutton takes a particular issue, history of abortion, and is interested in a particular faith tradition, American Protestants and largely evangelical Protestants, and then writes this very short history of it for a magazine called The Guardian. And you're going to read that. Then you're also going to read, and I'm going to talk about it, this short bit from the end of one of my books called The Color of Christ. But what I want you to notice is how you can take an issue, take a faith tradition, take a particular issue, and you can kind of narrate, you can look at the past and you can see when has something become an issue, when has it become a big issue, and then what has been the position of people in that faith tradition. That faith traditions can change over time in their approach to very sensitive issues, in this case abortion. The next reading will be on issues of race, and I'll have a video on that. and we'll talk about that in the next video.